Viola Desmond was born on July 6, 1945. She was born in Halifax, Canada. She was the daughter of a white mother and a black father. Her parents were intermarried, and although it wasn't considered acceptable back then, her parents were quickly accepted into the town community and often participated in community organizations. Viola admired her parents and was inspired by them to do her best. She aspired to be a successful businesswoman. Viola briefly taught at an intermixed school, one of the first schools to accept both teachers and students no matter their skin color. She then proceeded to study at the Field Beauty Center in Montreal, Canada. After a couple years of studying beauty, she opened V's Studio of Cultural Beauty in Halifax. She started to sell products to African Americans that were previously nearly impossible to find. She would also teach other girls how to do hair and how to study beauty. On November 8, 1946, 32-year-old Viola Desmond was passing through New Glasgow when her car broke down. She went to the shop and was told it was going to take around 3 hours to fix. It was suggested that she goes to the theater down the street. She bought her ticket and sat in the slightly more expensive section, which was implicitly the whites-only section. After people spotted her sitting in this seat, she was asked to get up and move by an usher. She immediately refused to move seats, and therefore she was removed by force by the police. She was taken to the police station and spent the night in jail. When she left the jail, Viola was really badly bruised. She ended up paying the $20 fine and an extra $6 in court fees. She ended up being charged with attempting to defraud the provincial government because of the 1 cent difference in amusement tax, which is a difference in tax between the upstairs seats and the downstairs seats. But Viola didn't give up there. She fought the case in court. During the trial, Viola mentioned the fact that when she was asked to move, she offered to pay the difference, but the offer was declined, which implies that it's not about the money. The judge decided on a $26 fine. 6 of those dollars went to the manager of the Roseland Theater, who was listed as a prosecutor in the court proceedings. During the trials, Viola was not given or offered legal representation. She was not even told she was entitled to any. In the court proceedings, only one legal official was involved. That is to say, there was no crown attorney. In the case of Viola Desmond, race was not mentioned, even though it was obvious that she was getting charged for sitting in the seating section reserved for whites only. This case is so important to Canadian history that people need to be educated on what it was like to be a person of color in the 1900s. Even today, we see racist segregation like Viola's story. The day Viola refused to switch seats, she not only completed a significant act of bravery, but she also opened people's eyes to the bigger problem at hand. She was charged for fraud that day, but it was clear that she was charged because she was taking the seat away from a white person. She was racially segregated that day. A symbol that reflects on Viola's story would be the theater chair. The object symbolized taking a stand. Even though Viola was sitting that day, she refused to stand. By refusing to stand, she actually ended up standing up for herself and other people who are racially segregated. The story of Viola Desmond only started to be told decades after her death. Her sister, Wanda Robson, spoke out on Viola's behalf with help from her professor. She spread Viola's story. In 2010, Wanda wrote a novel titled Sisters to Courage. In this novel, she discussed the stories of her sister and the segregation that she faced. In 2018, her face was put on the Canadian $10 bill, making her the first woman of color to be on a Canadian bill. Viola's story is now known all over the country and is taught in schools to teach children about racism. Now the whole country knows her name and recognizes that what happened that night was an act of racism, not fraud. Some themes that connect Viola Desmond with David Cheriandi's brother are collective healing through human connection and the use and abuse of power. First and foremost, the theme of collective healing through human connection feels so fitting for both of these stories. In the novel Brother, Frances and Michael are shown going through life together and helping each other through racism and segregation. After Viola went through this traumatic incident, her sister finally spoke up for her after her death. I think this signifies how close they were when Viola was alive. The theme is so powerful as it shows how siblings can play a great role in someone's healing process. Furthermore, the use and abuse of power play a great role in both these stories. In the novel Brother, Desiree gets searched for no reason, just because the police can because they have power over the teenagers. What happened to Frances that day was simply because the police abused their power. Similarly, Viola left jail the next day with bruises all over her, which for what she was charged for was not necessary at all. But yet again, the police abused their power. Viola Desmond was not only an activist all around the country, but she has left a legacy behind her, which I think we can all learn from the story that keeps on being told. Viola is an influential Black voice that needs to be celebrated.